You're listening to Dark Rain Chronicles. The rain hides many things, but it also remembers. Secrets washed away, voices swallowed by the storm. These are the stories it brings back, and tonight, you will hear them. Never, in all my wilderness pilgrimages, had I imagined confronting peril wearing a human face. Yet here I was, crouched low, breath catching behind the rough bark of an ancient pine, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Sometimes the predators you guard against aren't clawed or fanged. Sometimes they carry desperation in their eyes and wear your own shape. Elias, that's my name, and the wild places have always been my cathedral, a space to shed the mundane and reconnect with something elemental. This trek, a challenging ascent into the Rockies I'd coveted for years, was meant to be just that, a week-long immersion in untamed grace. 3 days unfolded like a cartographer's dream, panoramas that stole the breath, air like chilled crystal descending from glacial heights, and a solitude so profound it felt woven into the very fabric of the pines. Wildlife offered fleeting communion, the delicate step of deer at dusk, a distant earth-sign shadow melting into the tree line, the sovereign glide of an eagle etching circles on the vast blue canvas. But the fourth day delivered an encounter of a different, more menacing nature. Beneath a darkening canopy, beside a stream whispering its secrets over smooth stones, my small fire crackled, a solitary beacon against the encroaching night. I was spooning rehydrated sustenance, absorbing the forest's nocturnal symphony, when a sound alien to this sanctuary pierced the calm. Human intonations, slicing through the twilight hush, not the easy cadence of fellow travelers, unlikely this deep in, but jagged, fraught with a desperate ire that prickled my skin. Instinctively, I smothered the flames, the embers hissing into silence. Retreating into the thin sanctuary of my tent, I strained my ears against the nylon walls. The voices drew nearer. 2 men, their tones distinct. One a low, gravelly command, the other pitched higher, laced with exhaustion and fear. "Keep pace, damn you," the gravel voice scraped. "They'll be sniffing this trail soon enough." "I can't," the other whined, the sound thin and reedy. "Days. I'm spent." "Prison, Leo. Is that your preference? Because that's the terminus if they run us down. Now move." Ice traced my veins. Prison. Not lost wanderers then, but hunted men. Fugitives. I held my breath, scarcely daring to move, as their heavy footfalls approached. A blade of light from a torch sliced across the tent fabric, paused. The gruff voice uttered a low curse. "Signs of passage here, recent. So, haven't seen a soul. Means everything could be reported. We need to find them." A frantic pulse hammered my temples so loud I felt sure they could hear it through the thin barrier. Escape. Now. My car, a civilization away, felt impossibly distant, a 2-day hike at best. Darkness, usually a comfort, was now a liability. Clutching my pack, its familiar weight suddenly inadequate, I eased through the tent's rear flap. Their torchlight jittered like nervous insects among the trees on the opposite side, sweeping the clearing. Using the brook's murmur as cover, I began to creep away. 50 yards, perhaps less, before a raw bellow ripped the night. Hey, movement, over there. Instinct took over. I plunged into the black woods, abandoning stealth for speed. Briars clawed at my clothes. Thorny branches lashed my face. Pursuit thundered close behind, the crashing sounds fueling my terror. Directionless flight, guided only by the primal urge to flee. The phantom grasp of rough hands propelling me onward through the tangled undergrowth. Minutes blurred into an eternity. My lungs scorched, my legs turned to stone. But fear was a relentless engine. Finally, I couldn't command another step. I collapsed against a mossy trunk, gulping air, the forest floor spinning. Silence descended, heavy, watchful, adrift in the vast, indifferent wild. Prey. My camp, my provisions, left behind in the panicked retreat. Only the pack's meager contents remained. Water bottle, a few dense energy bars, torch, first aid kit. Shelter. I needed shelter. And thought. My eyes, adjusting, discerned a fallen behemoth nearby, its massive root ball ripped from the earth, creating a tangled cavern beneath. I burrowed within, shrinking into the damp earth and decaying leaves. Each nocturnal sigh of the forest, an owl's query, leaves skittering on a sudden breeze, jolted me upright, heart hammering. Fear warred with profound weariness, until, despite the terror, oblivion claimed me in fitful snatches. Dawn seeped through the woody lattice above, painting the forest floor in soft, oblique strokes. Tentatively, I surveyed the scene through the gaps in the roots. A deceptive tranquility lay upon the woods, birdsong replacing the silence. Yet vigilance remained paramount. I needed a strategy, a way back. My car, the only tangible goal. But the journey, stripped of supplies, would be arduous. And were they still out there? As I weighed the daunting options, a new sound intruded, a mechanical pulse beating against the sky. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. Helicopter, rescue, or the law hunting their quarry. Hope surged. I scrambled from my earthen refuge, seeking open ground, visibility. As I moved, new voices reached me, different from the night's desperate exchange. These were crisp, authoritative, organized. Team Alpha, grid sweep east. Beta, take the west. Remember, subjects considered dangerous. Approach with caution. Await backup. A wave of pure relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. The police. Salvation. I started towards the sound, then hesitated, a cold spike of caution staying my feet. Could the fugitives hear them too? Might desperation drive them to seize any advantage, like a hostage? My apprehension solidified into dread as a sudden rustling erupted behind me. Frantic, close. I spun. There, Silas and Leo, emerging from the dense woods, eyes burning with trapped animal fear. Silas, the gruff one, fixed me with a venomous glare. You, he rasped, the word thick with accusation. They're Judas. You brought them down on us. Hands raised, placating, I backed away. No, I swear, just a hiker, lost since last night. I want no quarrel with you. Silas advanced, a predator closing distance, his face a mask of grim resolve. Trouble finds us all eventually, friend, and you just became our passage out of this. Leo shifted beside him, licking dry lips, uncertain. Silas, maybe we should just... Quiet, Leo. Silas snapped, his focus locked hard on me. You walk with us. One wrong move, and it'll be your last. My thoughts spun like a trapped moth. Hostage? No. Couldn't let that happen. But they were larger, likely armed, cornered. Delay. Buy time. Keep them here. Okay, I managed, forcing steadiness into my voice. All right, I'll go. But my pack, I dropped it back there where I hid. I nodded towards the fallen tree. It has water, food. We'll need it if we're going to keep ahead of them. Silas waited for a tense moment, then gave a curt nod. Lead on, and be smart about it. Each step back towards the root cavern was measured, deliberate, my senses straining for the sounds of the approaching cordon, now undeniably closer. We reached the fallen giant. An inspiration, desperate and wild, sparked in my mind. I knelt, feigning retrieval, my hands scrabbling not for the pack but for the loose earth and leaf litter beneath the roots. In one fluid motion, I whirled, flinging the gritty handful straight into Silas's face. He yelled, a choked cry of surprise and pain, momentarily blinded. I didn't wait. I bolted, voice tearing free from my raw throat, screaming with every ounce of air I possessed. Here, help, they're here. The fugitives are here. Chaos erupted. Shouted commands echoed through the trees. Boots pounded the forest floor from multiple directions. Suddenly, the woods were alive with uniformed figures converging on our position. Freeze! Police! Down on the ground. Now! I hit the dirt instinctively, hands clamped over my head. There was a brief, violent scuffle, more shouting, heavy breathing, and then a tense, ringing silence. When I finally dared to lift my head, I saw Silas and Leo being efficiently subdued, wrists secured behind their backs. A steady hand rested on my shoulder, helping me rise. A woman officer with kind eyes looked me over. "Are you unharmed, sir?" she asked, her voice calm. "Are you the hiker reported missing?" A shaky nod was all I could manage. "Yes, that's me. I found them, or they found me." The ensuing hours dissolved into a procedural fog. Statements given, questions answered, a quick medical check. Their story unfolded in fragments relayed by the officers. Silas and Leo, escapees from a medium security facility, several states away, on the run for weeks, their desperate gamble ending here in the Rockies. As I was finally cleared to leave, the officer in charge, a man whose face seemed carved from the mountain granite itself, approached me. "You handled that exceptionally well," he said, his gaze direct. "Not many people would have kept their wits about them like that. You should be proud." I managed a wan smile. "Honestly, I was terrified the entire time." He offered a gruff chuckle that softened his features slightly. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, son. It's acting despite it." Riding back towards civilization, the wild landscape blurring past the car window, I reflected on the whirlwind of the last day. I'd sought sanctuary and stumbled into raw peril. Yet, in that crucible of fear, an unknown resilience had surfaced. I had met the abyss staring back from desperate human eyes, and somehow stepped back from the edge. The wilderness still calls to me. Its profound peace remains a potent lure. But now, that appreciation is laced with a sharper awareness. Danger wears many masks, and sometimes the most unpredictable predators walk upright. And perhaps the most vital trails we navigate are not those etched onto maps, but the unseen paths etched within, leading to the surprising, uncharted landscape of our own fortitude. The moon, a swollen pearl bleeding light, slicked the ocean's skin with a trembling silver track. Ideal conditions, we'd thought, for slicing through the midnight brine. But treading water now, a glacial dread seeped into my veins. Something vast, something with undeniable heft, had just ghosted against my calf, and it bore no resemblance to any fish I knew. The gentle sigh of waves against the shore suddenly felt like a predator's bated breath, masking the unseen thing coiled in the blackness below. Then, shattering the quiet, my friend Finn vanished beneath the surface, a choked gasp his only epitaph. My name is Liam. What began as a valedictory blaze of freedom for 4 newly minted graduates, myself, Finn, Maya, and Reese, had curdled instantly into nightmare. This secluded strand of coast was our haven for 3 days, a final exhale before the intake of corporate corridors and the measured tread of adult lives. Tonight was meant to crown the escape. The day had been flawless, sun-drenched, punctuated by the thwack of a volleyball, cooled by beers clutched around a bonfire's dying embers as twilight bled into dusk. When the moon ascended, fully commanding the sky, someone, Reese, I think, already shucking clothes, proposed the swim. "Seriously, people," he'd urged, his voice alive with the night's enchantment. "When will we ever have this again? Full moon, water like silk, not a single other human for miles." We succumbed, swept up in the lunar magnetism. Maya and I donned suits. Finn, ever impulsive, shed only his shirt before plunging in clad in shorts. We'd pushed out, chest deep, laughter echoing across the water as we splashed like children released from school. That's when the contact occurred. A definite, living pressure sliding past my leg. I froze, the laughter catching in my throat. "Guys," I'd managed, a tremor starting, but Finn's abrupt submersion stole the rest of my words. Now, silence radiated outwards from the point of his disappearance. We stared, aghast, at the disturbed water, then at each other. "Finn," Maya's voice was a thin thread of sound. "Finn, stop messing around." The plea hung there, hollow. We knew. Finn, a powerful swimmer, had been plucked downwards without a ripple, without a fight. "Out," Reese commanded. His customary swagger dissolved, leaving raw fear. "Get out of the water. Now." We turned shoreward, limbs thrashing, a panicked symphony of uncoordinated strokes. A cold fist squeezed my chest, the urge to simply scream threatening to capsize my reason. I fought it down, concentrating fiercely on the pull and push of my arms through the resisting water. Halfway there, maybe less, Maya screamed. I twisted, saw her dragged backward, arms windmills against the dark. "It's got my leg," she shrieked, her face a mask of pure terror. Reese and I surged towards her, the water suddenly viscous, like swimming through cooling tar. She slipped under just as our outstretched fingers grasped only empty water. No. The cry ripped from my throat as I dove, instinct overriding thought. Salt water seared my eyes. I blinked, peering into the liquid gloom. Nothing. Then a fleeting glimmer of pale flesh, an effervescence of trapped air. Maya, 10 feet down, sinking, already impossibly distant, and entwined around her ankle. Something. The filtered moonlight revealed little, only a long, serpentine form, fluid and wrong, belonging to no known taxonomy of the sea. Lungs screaming, I broke the surface, gasping. Reese bobbed beside me, his eyes huge. "See her," he choked out. I could only nod, breath ragged. We inhaled deeply, plunged again. This time only the crushing, featureless dark greeted us. We surfaced once more, panting, lost. The beach seemed leagues away, an unattainable sanctuary. "We have to go," Reese rasped, his voice fracturing. "Can't help them if we join them." His brutal logic pierced the fog of panic. He was right. Whatever shared this water with us possessed a power we couldn't fathom, let alone fight. Survival lay only on the sand. We swam, pushing aching muscles past exhaustion. Every splash, every swirl of current sent jolts of adrenaline through me. I braced constantly for the grab, the inexorable pull into the abyss that had claimed Finn and Maya. Perhaps 20 yards from salvation, Reese let out a strangled grunt. I turned. He was wrestling something unseen, his head barely clearing the waves. "Liam!" His cry was desperate, his hand reaching. "Help!" I churned towards him, arms leaden. Just as I closed the distance, his eyes widened in a final, horrific understanding. His mouth opened, but only a liquid gurgle escaped as he was violently submerged. Silence again, absolute this time. I treaded water, alone. My breath hitched in short, painful bursts. It had taken them all. I was next. Some rational part urged flight, the shore so close. But terror was an anchor, rooting me to the spot. I floated, suspended in dread, awaiting the inevitable. Then I saw it, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper black, gliding towards me just below the surface. Immense, easily twice the length of a man. Closer, it resolved. Not one entity, but a confluence, a churning, hypnotic mass of tendrils, appendages, feelers, all pulsing with a coordinated life. I wish I could claim courage, a final, defiant struggle. The truth. Blind panic erupted. I flailed, a desperate, pathetic thrashing against the inevitable. It was the paralysis of nightmare, limbs churning, yet gaining no purchase. The mass undulated directly beneath me. I felt the water roil, felt the first, cold, impossibly strong tendrils coil around my ankles. They were slick, coated in some viscous slime that raised the hairs on my arms. I drew one final, desperate lungful of air as the darkness pulled me down. The underwater world's profound hush descended, punctuated only by the frantic drumming of my own heart. Salt, stinging, I forced my eyes open and met it. Nothing conceived in waking thought, nothing dreamt in fever could have prepared me. A core mass pulsed with internal, bioluminescent light, orbited by countless undulating limbs and eyes. Dozens, scores of eyes, varying in size, all fixed unnervingly upon me. Gazing into those alien optics, my lungs burning for release, the impossible intruded. A voice not heard, but felt, resonated within my skull. Fear not. The thought bloomed, serene amidst the terror. You are selected. The pressure around my legs eased. Impossibly, I felt myself propelled upward. I erupted into the night air, gasping, inhaling as if for the first time. Shockingly, I wasn't alone. Finn, Maya, Reese, all present, blinking, looking as utterly bewildered and terrified as I felt. What was that? Finn stammered, his eyes wide and unseeing. I thought, gone. Before answers could form, the water around us ignited with light. The creature, the entity, breached the surface partially. The moonlight now revealed it fully. It possessed a terrible, otherworldly beauty, its skin shimmering with intricate patterns of light that seemed to shift and flow like living thought, conveying complex emotion. You are selected. The presence echoed in our minds. Witnesses, heralds from the depths to the surface. Witnesses to what? Maya breathed, her voice barely audible. The creature's luminescence pulsed in reply. Our minds flooded, inundated with visions. Sprawling cities beneath the waves, empires risen and crumbled, while humanity chipped flint. Technologies and knowledge dwarfing our most audacious dreams. We have observed your species across epochs, the presence conveyed. The time arrives for communion. You shall be our envoys. As swiftly as it manifested, the entity submerged, dissolving back into the profound dark. Gentle, unseen currents nudged us shoreward. We stumbled onto the damp sand, minds fragmented, reality reconfigured. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving us shivering in the cool night air, soaked and reborn. Did that actually happen? Reese asked, his voice trembling, stripped of all its earlier confidence. We looked from one stunned face to another, then out at the placid ocean. The moon's reflection lay unbroken, a perfect mirror denying the impossible truth. But we knew. We carried the impossible within us now. We had glimpsed wonders and terrors that would irrevocably alter our world. And we bore a message. Huddled on the sand, grappling with the enormity of it, a strange, hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. We'd sought one last adventure before bowing to the mundane. We'd found something infinitely more profound, more terrifying, more transformative. Our lives, tethered until moments ago to predictable futures, were now unmoored, and beneath the waves, ancient consciousness stirred, waiting for us to speak their truth, waiting for the surface world to finally comprehend the secrets held fast in the deep. Our midnight swim hadn't been an ending, but the astonishing, terrifying genesis of humanity's greatest voyage, and we, improbably, were its chosen navigators. The sickening lurch in my gut coincided with the directional shift, a compass needle spinning wildly within me. I'd blundered, catastrophically, but the realization bloomed too late. The locks were already snicked shut, The man at the wheel shed his guise of Samaritan like a snake its skin, and the desert, a vast, indifferent canvas of ochre and silence, unfurled limitlessly around us. It began with the mundane death rattle of my ancient sedan, a faithful beast finally surrendering its mechanical ghost on a ribbon of asphalt slicing through the New Mexico barrens. Hours I'd piloted this steel shell, the landscape a monotonous blur of skeletal cacti and spectral tumbleweeds. Dusk bled across the heavens, a violent watercolor of bruised purple and molten gold, yet its majesty was lost on me, eclipsed by the chilling certainty of being utterly stranded. The engine offered only a pathetic whine against the ignition's plea. My phone, a useless brick, confirmed my isolation. Marooned. Then, twin pinpricks of light pierced the deepening twilight. A surge, primal and hopeful, coursed through me. Salvation, surely, or at least passage to civilization. An old pickup, scarred and weary, materialized from the shimmer, slowing, its engine a low growl. The window descended, revealing a face etched by sun and time, lines crinkling around eyes that held a disarming twinkle, a smile, practiced and warm. Engine trouble. His voice, a gravel road dusted with kindness. I affirmed, the story tumbling out, the dead engine, the empty miles. He listened, head tilted, then offered transport to the nearest town. Hours drive, maybe, he rasped. Can get you a tow truck from there. A tremor of caution, my mother's spectral warnings about roadside Samaritans, vibrated within me. But the alternative? Succumbing to thirst or the predatory chill of the desert night. That would be incredible, I managed, hefting my worn backpack. Thank you. He called himself Silas as I settled onto the passenger side. The cab breathed leather and stale tobacco smoke. A mournful country ballad wept softly from the radio. We traded fragments of lives, my westward migration towards a new beginning in Los Angeles, my origins in some nameless Ohio town he dismissed with a shrug, the college friends awaiting me. He painted himself a native, rooted in this harsh terrain, claiming intimacy with its secrets. Know this desert like my own veins, he murmured. Yet, 20 minutes spun away, and a dissonant chord struck within me. The rhythm of his questions, the unnerving focus in his gaze when it flickered towards me. Something felt jagged beneath the smooth surface. I chided myself. Paranoia, born of vulnerability. Then, the cold realization slammed into me. We journeyed eastward. The setting sun, moments ago a beacon before us, now bled light onto my left shoulder. Silas, I ventured, striving for nonchalance. I think... Are we heading the wrong way? Wasn't the town west? Silence stretched, taut and thin. When he finally spoke, the earlier warmth had evaporated, leaving only chill bedrock. No, he stated, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. This is the right way. My pulse hammered against my ribs. My hand darted to the door handle, a futile gesture. The click of the child lock echoed like a closing cell door. Where are you taking me? The tremor in my voice betrayed me. The pretense shattered. A smile twisted Silas's lips, glacial and devoid of humor, sending ice shards down my spine. Somewhere quiet, he intoned, where we won't have interruptions. Raw panic clawed at my throat. My eyes scanned the cab, desperate for leverage, for anything. but the truck's interior was unnervingly tidy, purged of potential weapons. No stray wrenches, no forgotten tire iron. Barren. "Please," I whispered, hating the fragile sound. "Just let me go. I won't say anything, I promise." He chuckled, a rasping, ugly noise. "Oh, I count on that. Nobody ever says a thing." The implication struck with physical force. This was a practiced ritual. How many others? How many derelict vehicles marked spots like mine, their drivers swallowed by the silence? We rolled onward, the silence thick with unspoken menace, the miles spooling out into the desolate unknown. My mind scrabbled for an escape route, finding only dead ends. Trapped. A captive audience to my own unfolding nightmare, plunging deeper into an alien landscape. Just as despair threatened to engulf me entirely, Silas wrenched the wheel, abandoning the highway for a rutted dirt track. The pickup bucked and shuddered, plunging us into true wilderness, extinguishing the last ember of hope for a passing motorist. An eternity later, perhaps 20 minutes, the engine died. We sat in a small clearing, hemmed in by skeletal scrub and monolithic rock formations, silhouetted against the moonlit sky. A stark, treacherous beauty. This was no scenic overlook. "Out," Silas commanded, producing a handgun from beneath his seat, its metal gleaming dully. My limbs turned to lead as I obeyed. He followed, the weapon unwavering. "Walk," he ordered, gesturing with the gun barrel towards a fissure between two towering boulders. Flight seemed suicidal. The sheer immensity of the surrounding emptiness mocked the idea. Where could I possibly run? Exposure would claim me long before rescue. So I walked, thoughts frantic, searching for a fissure in his resolve. "You don't have to do this," I pleaded, voice quavering. "Whatever you intend, it's not too late to turn back." He offered no reply, only a nudge from the cold steel. 10 minutes of stumbling progress brought us to the shadowed maw of a cave. My stomach plummeted. The end point, the killing ground. I hesitated, eyes darting, seeking any sliver of hope in this grim tableau. And then I saw it. A glint of rusted metal beneath the moon's cold gaze, half submerged in the sand. Rebar. A forgotten remnant of some failed human endeavor. Primal instinct surged, overriding fear. I lunged, fingers scrabbling, closing around the coarse, heavy steel, just as Silas registered my movement. He lunged, a predator's swiftness, but desperation lent me speed. I swung the makeshift cudgel with every ounce of terrified strength, connecting solidly with his advancing arm. A strangled howl tore from him. The gun spun away into the darkness. I didn't linger. I fled. Ran with a ferocity I hadn't known I possessed, scrambling over unforgiving rock, tearing through thorny brush that ripped at fabric and flesh. Behind me, his curses and the sound of his pursuit echoed through the stillness. Directionless, propelled only by terror, I clawed my way up a steep, scree-covered slope. Reaching the crest, breathless, I saw them. Distant lights. A town. A highway. It signified only one thing. Sanctuary. I plunged down the opposite side, my foot snagging on a hidden root. The world tilted, tumbling headlong down the incline. I landed in a bruised heap at the bottom, momentarily stunned, air rasping in my raw throat. Then, the chilling sound. Footfalls descending the slope. He was coming. Ignoring the fire in my ankle, I hauled myself upright. He couldn't catch me. Not now. I forced myself into a limping run, the lights beckoning, growing brighter, closer. Behind me, Silas's ragged breathing was a terrifying metronome marking his approach. Suddenly, pavement materialized beneath my stumbling feet, a blessed, solid road, and then headlights, slicing through the night like an answered prayer. I lurched into their path, waving frantically. Tires screamed in protest as the car slewed to a halt inches away. An older couple, faces etched with alarm, stared out. "Help me," I choked out. "Please, he's trying to kill me." A heartbeat of hesitation. Then the woman leaned back, throwing open the rear door. "Get in, dear." No second invitation needed. I scrambled inside, collapsing onto the seat just as Silas burst from the scrub onto the roadside verge. "Go," I screamed. The driver didn't hesitate, the engine roaring as we surged forward, leaving Silas a diminishing silhouette swallowed by the vast desert night. We drove directly to the constabulary in the next town. The story spilled out, a torrent of fractured words, tears, and trembling. They located my derelict sedan, found Silas's abandoned truck near the cave entrance. But Silas himself, he had dissolved back into the arid expanse he claimed as his own. Gone. Sometimes the phantom touch of that night revisits my sleep. The cold dread, the rebar's weight, the what-ifs that haunt the edges of consciousness. What if the metal hadn't been there? What if that car hadn't arrived? Mostly, though, I contemplate the razor-thin margin between my survival and becoming another statistic, another name whispered in the wind. I don't offer rides, nor do I accept them. And before any long journey, my vehicle undergoes meticulous scrutiny. The monsters, I learned, aren't confined to childhood fears. Sometimes they wear friendly smiles and wait patiently by the roadside, offering passage into darkness. That percussion against the door, when it came, wasn't merely sound. It was a fissure cracking open the dead calm of 3:17 a.m. It wasn't just the hour, profoundly unvisited, nor the solitude of my perch on the 14th floor of this supposedly impenetrable tower. No, it was the cadence, insistent, demanding, radiating a certainty that chilled the marrow, a conviction that whatever supplicant waited beyond the wood was utterly alien to the human condition. My name is Ilara. Until that precise moment fractured my existence, life had unfolded in predictable, quiet rhythms. I sculpt worlds from light and shadow as a freelance visual artist, my days largely spent captive to the glow of my monitor, immersed in the silent language of pixels and hues. This apartment, this nest high above the city's thrum, had been my inviolable refuge. Sleep had claimed me there at my workstation that night, the computer's low thrum a lullaby, the screen a final, fading ember. The rapping jolted me from that shallow sleep, my heart instantly a frantic drum against my ribs, a phantom echo of a dream. But it sounded again, amplified, sharper, imbued with an unnerving resolve. I remained utterly still, eyes fixed on the impassive rectangle of the door. Who, in the deepest trough of night, would summon me? Possibilities flickered. A neighbor's crisis, building management with dire news. Who is it? The question emerged thin, frail, swallowed by the apartment's waiting darkness. Silence answered. Then, another blow, forceful enough to make the door shudder within its sturdy frame. I rose, a tremor starting deep in my legs. A primal urge screamed to retreat, to burrow beneath covers and pretend the world outside ceased to exist, like a child warding off imagined terrors. Yet, a stronger current, the relentless undertow of a curiosity that had always courted trouble, pulled me forward. Barefoot, I ghosted across the cool floorboards, each step measured, soundless. Reaching the threshold, I paused, my hand hovering near the lock, a visceral wrongness screaming from my gut. Danger resides here. Do not engage. Instead, drawn by that fatal curiosity, I pressed my eye to the peephole's distorting lens. The sight beyond contracted my veins with ice. A shape occupied the corridor, undeniably present, yet defying human proportion. It loomed, impossibly tall, its outline grazing the ceiling panels. Draped in what resembled a heavy, dark coat, the fabric rippled with an internal, unholy motion, defying the stillness of the air. And the face. I jerked back, breath catching, pulse hammering violently against my sternum. Where features should have been, eyes, nose, mouth, there was only an unnerving, smooth blankness, a pallid void. Nothingness sculpted into a head. As if my gaze were a physical touch, the entity abruptly surged forward, pressing its unseen mass against the door. A sound emanated now, low and guttural, a vibration that seemed to travel through the dense wood into the very bones of my hand, resting near the knob. Let me in, a voice commanded, not through the air, but blooming cold and sharp directly within the confines of my skull. A rasping intimacy that bypassed hearing altogether. I require entry. I stumbled back, shaking my head in mute refusal, though logic dictated it couldn't perceive the gesture. No. I forced the word past the constriction in my throat. Go. Please just leave. The assault on the door intensified, each impact a physical blow against the apartment's perceived safety, the walls resonating with the force. Let me in. The mental voice swelled, insistent, brutal. You must grant me passage. My fingers, clumsy with adrenaline, fumbled for my phone. 911. But the screen remained stubbornly blank. No signal. Impossible. Reception here was flawless. Absolute. The being outside, sensing this shift, this severing of connection, its next silent pronouncement slithered down my spine. No assistance is forthcoming, Alara. Only us now. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. The phrase became a psychic chant, relentless, each repetition gaining fervor, whipping itself into a frenzy within my mind. The door groaned, wood fibers audibly tearing under the onslaught. I fled, stumbling toward the bedroom, slamming the door shut, twisting the lock. With desperate strength, I shoved my heavy dresser against it, a gesture I knew, even then, was laughably inadequate. If that thing breached the main entrance, this flimsy barrier was mere symbolic resistance. The chanting ceased. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Then a sound that ripped the quiet asunder, the catastrophic splintering and crash of my front door yielding completely. Footfalls echoed in the main room, heavy, measured, deliberate. Each step resonated, drawing nearer, an inexorable advance. I shrank into the farthest corner of the bedroom, compressing myself against the cold plaster, eyes screwed shut. The steps halted directly outside my flimsy barricade. I could hear it breathing, a dry, rattling inhalation like wind through broken reeds, unnatural and horrifying. "Alara," it whispered, the voice now intimately inside my head, a parasite nesting in my thoughts. "I have arrived. Will you not emerge to welcome me?" My hands flew to my ears, a useless defense against an invasion already successful. The voice was within my domicile, now twisting through my consciousness, attempting to usurp my own volition. "You wish to open the door, Alara," it coaxed, seductive and vile. "Curiosity burns, does it not? Do you not yearn to behold my true form, to witness what I can unveil? And the most terrifying truth, a sliver of me did." A treacherous fragment yearned to understand this impossibility, to know the nature of the horror that had singled me out. Against my will, my body stirred, my own hand betraying me, reaching, inching toward the doorknob. I fought, pitting my entire being against this puppetry, a swimmer battling a monstrous tide. Just as my fingertips grazed the cool metal, another sound sliced through the mental fog, the shrill, mundane scream of my alarm clock. 6:00 a.m. Impossibly, hours had bled away like seconds. The entity unleashed a howl of pure frustration, a discordant shriek that vibrated the very walls around me. And then, as abruptly as it had manifested, the presence evaporated. The suffocating pressure lifted. My thoughts were my own again. I remained huddled in that corner long after the sun climbed, pouring clarifying light through the window. Only then did courage return in fragile measure. My sanctuary was violated, wrecked. The front door hung askew from shattered hinges, bearing deep, gouging wounds. Furniture lay overturned, pictures flung from walls, but of the visitor, no physical trace remained. I notified the authorities, the words feeling hollow and absurd even as I spoke them. How could this experience translate into any report they could file? I scarcely believed it myself. In the ensuing days, I clung to the fiction of a hyper-realistic nightmare. But the brutalized door, the chaotic landscape of my apartment, these were undeniable artifacts. Within the week, I had fled, securing a new dwelling on the ground floor, blessed with multiple escape routes. Now, salt lines the thresholds. Iron charms hang sentinel over every entrance. Whether these small rituals possess any true power against such a thing, I cannot know, but they offer a sliver of perceived defense. Yet, true safety feels like a forgotten country. I know now. I know there are entities occupying the shadowed folds of the world, things that rap upon doors in the deepest night, things that hunger to be admitted, and sometimes in the quiet, vulnerable moments, I find myself wrestling with the question, what if I had turned the knob? What visage would have been revealed? What transformation awaited? Part of me recoils, grateful for ignorance, but another part, buried deep, still pulses with that dangerous, terrible curiosity. I live in fear that one day, that curiosity might claw its way to the surface. So, should you ever be startled from sleep by a summons at your door, one that feels too urgent, too insistent, too other, Heed this warning, born of terror. Do not answer. Do not even look. For once you witness what waits beyond the threshold, once its voice takes root in your mind, genuine escape becomes a fragile illusion. It is out there, waiting, and eventually, inevitably, it will knock again. Three nights it took after settling into the hollow silence of the old Barlow place for the scraping to begin. Just the wind-worried sigh of branches against glass, I told myself, or perhaps the scuttling industry of mice within the ancient walls, the usual nocturnal orchestra of a house settling its bones. But dawn revealed ragged furrows torn deep into the wood of my front door, visceral wounds that spoke of something other than wind or vermin. My flimsy sense of security evaporated. Fortifications were needed. Croft and Sons Mercantile was the town's heart of hardware, a relic breathing sawdust and rust, likely rooted there since the first foundations were laid. A tarnished bell above the door announced my entry with a dissonant clang. Narrow aisles choked with paint tins and coiled hoses, and tools of forgotten purpose, pressed in, each surface filmed with the patient dust of ages. Behind a scarred counter stood Silas Croft, a figure seemingly hewn from the same seasoned timber as his shelves. 60-odd years, grayed and stoic, his hands maps of labor, his gaze, flat and incurious, lifted as I approached. "I need a deadbolt," I stated, aiming for nonchalance. "Something solid." The shift was instantaneous, subtle yet absolute. His posture stiffened, the neutrality in his eyes hardening into something flinty, as if I'd uttered an obscenity. "Don't sell those," he clipped, "to your kind." Confusion prickled. "My kind? I don't understand." "Locks," he enunciated, stretching the word thin, condescendingly slow. "Not for newcomers. Town has its ways." A disbelieving huff escaped me. "That's... surely you're joking. I'm a resident now. I bought the Barlow place down on Sycamore Lane." His eyes, pale and watchful, narrowed further. "Owning walls doesn't make you part of the foundation. You want nails, a shovel. Fine, but locks, we don't permit it." Permit it? The words felt absurd on my tongue. It's for safety, basic security. How can you not permit it? He leaned across the counter, planting weathered palms flat upon its surface, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial rasp. "Pay attention. This town, it breathes differently. Rules you don't see keep it breathing. One rule is, outsiders don't bolt their doors. Unwise. For us." A chill traced my spine. "Unwise for you. What about for me?" "You'll learn," he murmured, the softness somehow more menacing than his earlier curtness. "Or you'll go. Most go." I retreated from the counter, a frantic pulse hammering in my ears. Some bizarre initiation ritual, I reasoned desperately, a hazing for the new face. Resolved, I drove 30 miles to the adjacent county, procuring the most formidable deadbolt available, complete with steel reinforcements. No antiquated local custom would leave me exposed. That evening, wrestling the new hardware into place, the distinct sensation of being observed crept over me. Peering through the darkened panes revealed only the impenetrable blackness of the rural night, yet the feeling persisted, a palpable weight against my skin. I was under surveillance. Midnight brought the return of the scraping, now amplified, insistent. It migrated, a restless probing, from the front door to the downstairs windows, one by one, testing each portal. I rechecked the locks, the tumblers clicking with reassuring finality, before retreating to the living room armchair, listening as unseen movement circled the perimeter of my house. Morning offered fresh insults. New, deeper gouges clawed around the reinforced doorframe. And something else. A slip of paper nudged beneath the door. Crude, shaky letters spelled out, "Take it off." I crushed the note, fury warring with fear. A campaign of intimidation. Nothing more. I wouldn't yield. But the siege intensified. Night after night, the scraping grew louder, evolving into a frantic scrabbling. More notes materialized. Remove the lock. You were warned. It brings danger. Sleep became a luxury snatched under the glare of every light bulb, my nerves fraying with each creak and groan of the old house. Then, the knocking commenced. Not the tentative rap of a visitor, but a measured, rhythmic battery against the wood, shifting methodically. Door, window, adjacent window, back to the door. It began punctually at the dead hour of 3 a.m., persisting until the first weak light of dawn. Peering out yielded nothing but empty shadows, yet the air vibrated with movement, with whispers skittering just below the threshold of comprehension. A week of this eroded my resolve. Defeated, I found myself once more under the jangling bell of Croft & Sons Mercantile. Silas Croft regarded my haggard appearance without a flicker of surprise. "Ready to undo it?" he asked, dispensing with pleasantries. "Why?" The word tore from my throat. "Just tell me why I can't secure my own home." He emitted a long, weary sigh, the lines on his face deepening, aging him further. "Some things, they need passage. The town requires it. It's the balance we keep." "Passage? For what? Into my house? Why?" He offered no answer, only that unwavering, faded stare. A protracted silence stretched, thick with unspoken things. "You ought to leave, Elias," he said finally, "while leaving is still your choice." That night, the assault changed. The knocking abandoned its circuit, focusing solely on my front door. A relentless, demanding percussion. The whispers swelled, coalescing into discernible words, chillingly clear. "Let us in. We must enter. You have to let us in." I sat huddled on the floor, spine pressed hard against the trembling wood, tremors racking my body. The expensive lock held, but the doorframe groaned, splintering under the unseen pressure. Whatever entities clawed at my threshold, the barrier enraged them. Near dawn, an abrupt silence fell. An hour I waited, muscles locked, before daring to look. The porch lay empty, undisturbed, save for a fresh carving etched into the wood directly above the lock. Last warning. Removing the deadbolt that morning was an act of surrender. My hands shook so violently, the screwdriver kept slipping. As the final screw came free, a subtle sound made me turn. Silas Croft stood at the foot of my driveway, observing. Wise, he nodded, a flicker of something akin to approval in his eyes. You'll find your rest now. What is this place? My voice was a dry rasp. What kind of town forbids locks? He offered only a thin, enigmatic smile before turning and receding down the quiet lane. That night was utterly silent. No scraping, no knocking, no whispers feathered the edges of hearing. The profound stillness was, paradoxically, the most terrifying thing yet. It was the silence of open access, the quiet confirmation that something could now enter, whenever it pleased. The house went on the market the following day. The realtor accepted my decision with an unnerving lack of surprise, as if departures were the town's primary export. When I inquired idly about other available properties, she gave me a peculiar look. There are none, she said simply. Nobody new stays long. They all leave. The ones who resist, who try to keep things barred tight, they seem to leave the quickest. I waited out the sale in a sterile motel room in the next county. The house sold swiftly to a local family. News that seemed to ripple through the town with quiet satisfaction. On the day I loaded the last of my possessions, Silas Croft materialized beside my moving truck. Some places prefer to breathe, he remarked cryptically, his gaze distant. Some doors aren't meant for barring. Remember that, Elias, wherever you land. I remember. I fled to the anonymity of a sprawling city, where reinforced doors and complex security systems are unquestioned necessities. Yet sometimes in the deepest hours of the night, a faint dry scratching seems to whisper at my apartment door, and I wonder if the town's reach is longer than I imagined. I wonder if, back on Sycamore Lane, new arrivals are wrestling with locks, learning the immutable lesson of a place with rules that refuse to be broken. And every night, before sleep claims me, I check the deadbolt, the chain, the security bar, even as a cold sliver of doubt whispers that perhaps, just perhaps, locks don't keep things out. Perhaps they only make them angrier. I recall the precise evening its presence first registered, deep within the house's quiet hours. Having just surrendered to the embrace of a hot shower, I stood swathed in steam within the bathroom's confines. The overhead bulb remained unlit. Only a meager luminescence bled from the hallway through the partially open door, painting the damp tilework in shades of gray. It was then, scanning the slick ceramic landscape above the tub, that my gaze snagged on an anomaly. Moisture had mapped the white surface with erratic continents of dampness. My initial thought, mundane. Mold, perhaps. A common bloom of brownish stains. Yet, leaning nearer, a peculiar deliberation in the pattern emerged. The edges didn't just sprawl. They curved with an intention that spoke of anatomy. A shoulder slope. The nascent suggestion of an arm. Squinting, I perceived the faint impression, the barest outline of a human form pressed ghost-like against the porcelain, though the space before it stood undeniably vacant. My fingers met the tile. It was glacial, slick with condensation. The miasma of mold hung heavy, redolent of sodden fabrics forgotten in shadowed corners. A flick of the switch, and harsh light flooded the room. Instantly, the shape dissolved, retracting into a mere innocuous patch of wetness. Fatigue, I reasoned. Sleep deprivation playing tricks on perception. I nudged the window open a fraction, inviting the cool, silent night air. Brushing my teeth, my reflection held my gaze captive in the mirror, a deliberate avoidance of the wall behind. Then, bed. The incident, I convinced myself, was unworthy of further thought until the following nightfall. Around midnight, the subsequent evening found me seeking solace in the shower once more. A long day's labor had left my muscles taut, yearning for the percussive warmth of the water. As before, I preferred the dim sanctuary, the hallway lamp casting just enough light to navigate by outline. Steam billowed, water cascaded down my spine, and I closed my eyes, attempting to dissolve into the heat. A flicker, peripheral and indistinct, snapped my attention back. I froze, eyes wide. There, directly before me on the tile canvas, moisture was actively coalescing into another aberrant form. No mere stain this time. It articulated something akin to a partial visage, a shadowed depression where an eye might reside, a darker smear hinting at a mouth agape. A tremor ran through my shoulders, wiping stinging water from my eyes. I stared, transfixed. It held its shape, amorphous yet suggestive, like a face straining against the fabric of a damp shroud. The mildew odor intensified, pressing close, constricting my chest. I drew a ragged breath. One hand reached out, hesitantly tracing the tile's contours. Cold. Clammy. With a convulsive movement, I slapped the light switch. The apparition vanished, bleached into simple dampness. I remained motionless, heart hammering against my ribs, water streaming unheeded down my face and neck. Shutting off the shower, I toweled off with brusque efficiency and exited the tub. Leaning heavily on the basin, my reflection offered only my own weary eyes, skin beaded with water. Nothing else. That night, the bathroom door remained resolutely ajar. In the days that unfolded, I waged a campaign of denial and domestic warfare. I attacked the tiles with bristling sponges, drenched them in chemical foggers designed to eradicate mold, and kept the extractor fan whirring relentlessly post-shower. The cloying scent receded somewhat, yet within a couple of days, a familiar phenomenon recurred. Allow the humidity to bloom, and the stains would begin their subtle figuration. Never explicitly human, they nonetheless bore angles and curves that resonated with shoulders, the line of a chin, the gesture of a hand. It was never mere random modeling. An unsettling intentionality always lingered, as if something struggled towards personification. Prolonged observation invariably summoned a profound unease, the visceral certainty of not being alone. My chest would tighten, demanding conscious effort to regain calm. The light remained my weapon, banishing them instantly, but darkness and dampness were their allies, coaxing them back from the porcelain depths under the hallway's faint glow, or the weak gray light of dawn filtering through the small window. One particular night, sleep proved elusive. I lay rigid in bed, listening to the profound silence, until the digital clock glowed 3 a.m. Rising, drawn by an unseen current, I drifted towards the bathroom. A faint, rhythmic plink reached me. The faucet, though tightly shut, yielded a single, deliberate drop every few seconds, a soft but insistent metronome in in the stillness. I tried the knob. It offered no further purchase. Standing there, suspended in the pre-dawn quiet, I simply listened. The mold's phantom scent had returned, threading the air. Across the room, the tiles flanking the far end of the tub displayed fresh cartographies of dampness. These were different. A cluster of faces, perhaps 3 or 4, huddled close. Their features remained indistinct, blurred impressions. Some hinted at deeply shadowed sockets for eyes. Others presented flat, broad patches suggestive of silent, open mouths. An unnerving fancy struck me that they might be whispering, locked in some soundless debate, but only the faucet's drip punctuated the silence. A knot tightened in my stomach. My throat felt parched. The urge to flood the room with light warred with a morbid curiosity to witness whatever might transpire in the gloom. Step by cautious step, I advanced, acutely aware of my own breathing. The fungal odor thickened, becoming almost palpable. Then, I perceived it. A subtle animation, a barely discernible shifting within the moist patterns themselves, as if they breathed with the room's humidity. The edges seemed to pulse, darkening and lightening fractionally, evoking the disturbing image of a hand smoothing them from the other side of the wall. My jaw locked. A film of sweat beaded on my brow. Extending a tentative finger, I made contact. The tile was slick, but the water running down its surface felt wrong. Thicker than mere condensation, almost viscous. Slimy. I recoiled, sniffing my fingertip. Pure mildew. A nervous flutter erupted low in my gut. My hand found the switch. Light exploded, instantaneous and absolute. The shapes disintegrated. The tiles gleamed wetly, innocuously normal save for the lingering droplets. I killed the light again, plunging the room back into darkness, and waited, breath held. A full minute passed in watchful silence. Nothing reappeared immediately. Rinsing my finger beneath the now steadily dripping faucet, I retreated to bed, a tapestry of frustration and bone-deep weariness settling over me. The following days saw futile experiments. I attempted to capture proof, positioning my phone outside the bathroom door at night, recording the darkness punctuated by the faucet's drip. The audio was clear, but the video revealed only impenetrable shadows, perhaps the faintest hint of ill-defined shapes. Leaving a lamp burning in the bedroom with the bathroom door wide open proved equally fruitless. The forms materialized only in the barest minimum of light, retreating instantly from the beam of a flashlight or the glare of the overhead fixture. The smell, however, remained a constant, unwelcome companion. It clung stubbornly, defying my cleaning efforts. Not the sharp tang of decay, but a damp, stagnant odor. The olfactory ghost of towels never properly dried. A pervasive disquiet became my shadow. Entering the bathroom triggered an involuntary tension. My shoulders hunched, the muscles in my neck knotting. Breathing felt constricted within those 4 walls. Showering transformed into a strained ritual of vigilance, my eyes constantly scanning the tiles, anticipating their spectral emergence. I began to favor the dimness, leaving the main light off, perversely wanting to witness their return. Inevitably, after several minutes under the hot spray, the moisture would begin its insidious artistry. The configurations shifted each time, a suggestion of head and shoulders here, the curve of limbs there, but always, unsettlingly, anthropomorphic. They never moved overtly, yet seemed to subtly rearrange themselves in the periphery, in the space between blinks. One evening, showering in the dimness, I spoke aloud, the words feeling alien and absurd in my own throat. "I know you're here," I murmured. A surge of the mold scent answered, thick and cloying. Simultaneously, I perceived a subtle pressure shift in the water striking my skin, an unevenness, as though an unseen obstruction deflected part of the stream. My gaze flickered to the shower curtain. It billowed slightly inward, a gentle, persistent nudge, as if prodded from the other side. With a surge of adrenaline, heart slamming against my ribs, I ripped the curtain back. Empty space. The gurgle of the drain. Turning back, my eyes caught it. A shape like a half-formed face had coalesced near the faucet on the damp tile. My chest seized. I fumbled for the light switch, killed the water, and scrambled out, hands trembling as I dried myself and dressed. A palpable dread began to precede every necessary trip to the bathroom. Yet, hygiene demanded entry. Each time became an inspection, scrutinizing the tiles. Sometimes the figures were mere whispers of silhouette, faint suggestions against the white. Other times they possessed a disquieting depth, shadows hinting at volume. The smell was a constant. The faucet's drip became more insistent, defying my attempts at repair. New washers, a check of the visible plumbing, yielded nothing. Each droplet, magnified in the apartment's silence, seemed an auditory reminder. You are not alone. In a further attempt at control, I left the bathroom window flung wide open one night, hoping vigorous ventilation would desiccate the space. It offered marginal improvement, but the moment steam began to gather during my shower, the shapes crept back into view. I escalated my cleaning, resorting to a potent bleach solution, scrubbing until my arms burned and the fumes stung my eyes. The mold odor retreated for a day, perhaps two, but humidity was the only invitation the patterns required. Running a hand over the grout, I noticed it felt crumbly in places. A chilling thought surfaced. Water, seeping behind the tiles for weeks, months, cultivating something unseen within the wall cavity. I pictured thick, fungal growths pressing outward, their contours manifesting as these shifting stains. I swallowed hard, pushing the image away. My showers became exercises in efficiency, brief bursts under the water before the dampness could fully conspire. I kept the light blazing most of the time, a deterrent that seemed largely effective. But lapses occurred. Forgetting the switch before entering, I'd catch peripheral glimpses. Once, a terrifying triptych of faces aligned near the top, seemingly staring down. Another time, a distinct hand shape materialized near the sink. As I ran the tap to wash my face, its shadowed fingers appeared to subtly curl. My breath hitched. The light switch was my immediate reflex. Obliteration. There was no rational framework for this. I held no prior belief in the spectral, the uncanny. This apartment, my home for a year, possessed no known history of peculiarity. Yet now, the bathroom felt like annexed territory, alien and hostile. Standing within it, I felt the weight of unseen scrutiny. Showering, the palpable sense of silent entities crowding the steam, never fully resolving, never speaking, never making contact, yet undeniably present. Their proximity was a physical pressure. The tension became chronic, lodging permanently in my shoulders. Sleep offered little respite, fractured by sweats and the phantom sounds of dripping water, or the soft slither of the shower curtain. I tried to fortify my mind against it, repeating mantras of mold and moisture, tricks of light and shadow. But the visceral feeling, the tremor in my hand as it closed around the doorknob, refused dismissal. Humming offered no shield. Music played on my phone sounded tinny and hollow in the small, charged space. The water dripped. The odor persisted. The shapes formed. One night, resolve hardened within me. A different approach. I extinguished every light in the apartment, positioning myself as a sentinel in the hallway, gazing into the bathroom's absolute darkness. Only the faint sodium glow from the street lamp outside, filtered through the small window, provided the barest illumination, limning the edges of the tub and tiles. The characteristic smell was faint, almost absent in the cool, dry air. I waited, motionless, for perhaps 10 minutes. Then, subtly, it began. A dark patch manifesting on a lower left tile, slowly extending upwards, coalescing into a rough silhouette that suggested a figure hunched in on itself. I edged closer, breathing shallowly through my nose, mouth dry, pulse accelerating. Reaching out, I tapped the tile gently with a fingernail. The surface felt slick, unnaturally so. The shape seemed to shudder, disturbed by the contact. I drew back, waiting. A single, soft drip from the faucet broke the silence. The hairs on my neck prickled. My jaw ached with tension. "What do you want?" The question escaped me low and tremulous. No answer, no sound beyond the drip. But in the gloom, I thought I perceived the shape quiver again, striving for definition, resolving momentarily into something that might have been hollow eyes regarding me. A backward step, my spine hitting the hallway wall. My hand, acting on instinct, found the light switch. Illumination. Absence. I killed the light once more. This time the shape did not immediately return. The remainder of the night was spent on the couch, staring into the shadowed landscape of my apartment. The bathroom door was now firmly closed. Still, a faint trace of mildew teased my nostrils. The knot in my stomach remained impervious to relaxation. I needed the tense cords in my neck, finding no release. Morning brought a renewed, almost frantic effort at normalcy. Bathroom door flung open, lights blazing, window wide. A small fan positioned on the floor to churn the air. A determined campaign to banish dampness. The smell dissipated noticeably. In the full light of day, the tiles appeared utterly mundane. White ceramic, slightly discolored grout, nothing more. I wiped them down vigorously with a dry towel before leaving for work. That evening, returning home, I approached the bathroom with caution. The air smelled cleaner, fresher. Turning off the overhead light, I left only the small hallway lamp burning, its weak glow spilling into the doorway. Peeking inside, nothing. I ran the sink faucet for a moment, watching the water course directly downwards, leaving no strange residue or pattern. Relief, fragile and tentative, began to bloom. Perhaps it was over. I decided on a shower before bed. Stripping down, I turned on the hot water, stepping beneath the spray with deliberate calm, yet every sense remained on high alert. For the first few minutes, normalcy reigned. Then my eyes caught it, a faint discoloration blooming at the edge of one tile near the shower head. It spread with unnerving slowness, elongating into a thin streak, strongly suggestive of an arm. My muscles seized. The mildew scent, faint but unmistakable, returned to the humid air. The shower curtain beside me rustled, then gave a distinct, gentle tug, as if pulled by unseen fingers. Steam stung my eyes. I forced my breathing to remain steady. Reaching out, I yanked the curtain aside. Nothing. Only empty air and glistening tile. I looked back. The arm-like streak now culminated in a blurry, indistinct face, the two shapes seeming horribly connected. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. My chest felt crushed. Light switch. Shower off. Out. Drying. Dressing with frantic haste. Eyes averted from the walls. The knowledge settled then, heavy and final. This was not going away. Comprehension remained elusive and solutions non-existent. The moisture, the mold, whatever it was, persisted in its attempts to sculpt these forms, these faces and bodies haunting the periphery. They offered no sound, no overt movement, yet their presence resonated in the damp air, the pervasive smell, the unnerving pressure on the curtain, the relentless drip of the faucet. I began sleeping with my bedroom door shut, a towel wedged firmly against the threshold, a flimsy barricade offering a sliver of psychological defense. At this juncture, I simply coexist with it. I consciously divert my thoughts, focusing pragmatically on keeping the bathroom arid, the light burning whenever I must enter, refusing to let my gaze linger on the tiles when darkness reigns. My showers are brief. The exhaust fan runs almost constantly. The shapes still manifest intermittently, but I have cultivated a deliberate blindness, breathing through the reflexive tension, accomplishing my necessary routines with practiced speed. It never ceases entirely. Whenever the confluence of humidity and dimness occurs, I sense them gathering on the walls, silent, protean, dissolving instantly under illumination. I have confided in no one. What proof could I offer? What explanation exists? I accept, with a weary resignation, that something within my bathroom attempts manifestation through water and decay. It cannot dictate my life. I will not abandon my home for shadows on tile. And so, I remain. I manage. I watch my back, keep my hand steady near the light switch, and ensure the bulb is always functional. It is all I can do. The first rifle crack wasn't merely sound. It was a physical blow against the forest's tranquility, launching birds skyward in a panicked confetti of feathers. The second, a heartbeat later, chewed wood inches from my cheek, spitting splinters like venom. In that instant, the grim calculus shifted. This wasn't trespass, not simple poaching. They were hunting me. My name is Alara. For 5 years, Viridian Peaks National Preserve has been my sanctuary and my charge. A custodian of its sylvan depths, I cherish the solitude, the communion with wildlife, the quiet satisfaction of conservation, whispered to curious visitors. No manual, however, no drill, had ever sketched the contours of the terror that found me that day. It began unremarkably, a routine patrol through the northern quadrant, territory shadowed by recent whispers of illicit activity. Autumn breathed crispness into the air, the early light performing alchemy on the turning leaves, dappling the forest floor in gold. A profound stillness held sway, yet as I pressed deeper, dissonance crept in, Branches snapped unnaturally. The undergrowth bore wounds inconsistent with animal passage. Faint impressions marred the loam. A primal intuition coiled tight within me, a warning hum beneath the woodland calm. But duty compelled me onward. Investigate. That was the mandate. Then, a glint beneath the ferns. Sunlight snagged on something artificial. Heart thrumming against my ribs, I advanced, parting the fronds with deliberate slowness. A snare lay revealed, not some makeshift wire loop, but a heavy gauge, brutally efficient contraption built for formidable prey. This was escalation. Poachers we'd known, yes. Furtive figures skirting the edges, but never this calculated, this equipped. My radio crackled alive as I relayed the discovery, requesting support. Mid-transmission, muffled voices drifted through the trees. I silenced the radio instantly, a cold dread prickling my skin. Dropping low, I ghosted toward the sound. Two figures materialized between the ancient trunks, clad in camouflage, cradling rifles that looked brutally capable. Their murmured conversation confirmed my fears. This wasn't chance. It was methodical harvest, an organized plunder. Proof. I needed undeniable proof. My hand, trembling slightly, sought the camera at my belt. Clear images, faces, weaponry could anchor a prosecution. I raised the lens, found focus through the trembling leaves, and depressed the shutter. In the profound quiet, the click was a thunderclap. Both men spun, rifles snapping up, their movements blurring with lethal speed. I froze, becoming stone, praying the dappled light concealed me. An eternity stretched taut between heartbeats. Then, a silent gesture passed between them, and they began advancing, methodical, predatory. Escape. The thought detonated in my mind. I retreated, placing each foot with agonizing care. But haste betrayed me. A desiccated twig shattered under my boot, the sound sharp, definitive. There! The shout ripped through the stillness. The first shot followed, a violent punctuation mark. I didn't pause to analyze intent. I ran. Vegetation clawed at my face. Branches whipped my arms as I plunged through the dense undergrowth. Instinct overriding thought. Behind me, shouts, the crashing sounds of pursuit. The second shot gouged the bark of a nearby pine, showering me again, and the horrific certainty struck. They weren't warning shots. They aimed to silence me permanently. My lungs seared, legs turned to tormented lead, but terror was a relentless engine. These woods were mine. I knew their secrets, their hidden pathways, my sole advantage. My mind, frantic, grasped for strategy. Miles separated me from the nearest station. The radio, deep in this forested basin, was inert metal. I was utterly alone. Veering from any discernible trail, I angled toward a network of limestone caves etched into the hillside, a known refuge. If I could reach their shadowed mouths, the labyrinthine passages might offer sanctuary. The gurgle of water reached me, a promise. The caves lay just beyond the stream, but bursting from the tree line, hope fractured. Recent downpours had transformed the usually docile stream into a churning, brown torrent. A moment's hesitation. The crossing looked suicidal, but the nearing voices behind me were a death sentence deferred. I plunged in. The cold was a physical shock, the current a brutal hand shoving me downstream. My boots skidded on slick, submerged stones. Halfway across, my footing vanished. The world inverted, a chaos of rushing water, tumbling darkness. I clawed frantically toward the surface, lungs screaming for air. Gasping, water streaming from my eyes, I saw the dark maw of the cave entrance rushing toward me. A final, desperate surge of adrenaline propelled me forward. My fingers closed on a jutting rock shelf, and I hauled my sodden, shivering body from the torrent, collapsing onto the damp cave floor, coughing violently. No respite. Shouts echoed from the opposite bank. They were crossing. Staggering upright, muscles protesting, I pushed deeper into the cave's embrace. Absolute darkness swallowed me. I navigated by touch, rough-hewn walls scraping my skin. Splashing sounds reverberated from the entrance. They were in the water. I stumbled faster, ignoring the burgeoning collection of scrapes and bruises. The passage twisted, bifurcated, branched into unseen corridors. I chose turns at random, praying the maze would consume my pursuers. Minutes later, or perhaps an age, I found myself in a small, tight chamber. A sliver of light filtered from a fissure high above, dimly illuminating a space barely large enough to contain me. It had to suffice. I wedged myself into a narrow crevice, forcing my breathing into shallow, silent rhythms. Waiting. Time dissolved into an agonizing suspension. I heard them moving through the tunnels, their voices distorted, echoing eerily off the stone. Sometimes distant, sometimes terrifyingly immediate. Gotta be in here. One voice growled, unnervingly close. Leave no loose ends. Boss'll skin us if this gets out, the other replied, his words sharp with grim consequence. I shrank further into the rock, scarcely daring the intake of breath. A flashlight beam sliced across the chamber opening, sweeping inches from my hiding place. My heart hammered against my ribs, convinced I was discovered. But the light moved on. Their voices receded down another passage. I remained entombed in fear long after silence reclaimed the cave. Hours bled together. Only the subtle shift in the meager light, hinting at dusk's approach, finally coaxed movement from my petrified limbs. Every muscle shrieked as I unfolded myself. Slowly, with infinite caution, I retraced my steps through the subterranean maze. Emerging into the forest felt like surfacing from a drowning dream. The woods were bathed in the soft, forgiving hues of sunset. No sign of the men. They had gone, vanished like phantoms into the twilight. Against all odds, I had survived. On legs that felt like brittle sticks, I began the long, arduous trek back toward the ranger station. Full darkness had descended by the time I stumbled through the door, a ruin of my former self. Soaked, mud-caked, scratched, eyes wide with exhaustion and residual terror. My colleagues reacted with stunned alarm as my fragmented story tumbled out. Armed men, the chase, the river, the cave. They'd been on the verge of initiating a search, anxiety mounting with each passing hour I failed to check in. The ensuing days were a whirlwind of official reports, hushed interviews with law enforcement, internal Park Service debriefings. Investigators unearthed evidence confirming my account. Hidden caches of weaponry, more snares, even a crude processing camp concealed deep within the preserve. But the hunters themselves, gone without a trace. In the weeks that followed, as security measures tightened and the investigation ground on, I wrestled with the psychic wounds. The forest, once my solace, now felt charged with menace. Shadows flickered with imagined threats. Sudden noises sent jolts of adrenaline through me. Yet, gradually, as the nightmares receded, fear transmuted into a cold, hard resolve. They had violated this sacred place, threatened the creatures I'd sworn to defend, and attempted to extinguish my life to protect their dark enterprise. I would not grant them victory by succumbing to fear. I returned to my patrols, my senses honed to an almost painful acuity. I shared my ordeal, training fellow rangers to recognize the subtle signatures of sophisticated poaching, advocating for enhanced safety protocols, improved communication networks. Sometimes, walking the familiar trails, my gaze still sweeps the tree line, half expecting camouflaged shapes to detach themselves from the foliage. The snap of a twig can still make my pulse leap. But then, a glimpse of elk grazing undisturbed in a meadow, or the liquid grace of river otters at play, reaffirms my purpose. This forest remains my home, my responsibility. Whatever dangers lurk within its depths, I will continue to stand sentinel, because this is the core of what we do. Guardians positioned between the wild heart of the world and those who would exploit it, regardless.